So now that we have things underway at the desktop level and we have our data source established, the next thing we need to do then is head off to our Web Projects control panel. So you can click up here on the Web Projects button on the toolbar, and you have your Web Projects control panel. Now, if you are relatively new to Alpha 5 or just installed it, you may have gotten a dialog before you got the control panel that talked about what the basic principles of a web project. And throughout this whole series of videos, you will probably get a few dialogues and informational pieces that do not show in my system because I've already chosen to dismiss them. I'll suggest that you go ahead and take a minute and read those dialogues, or at least know what's there. And it won't be long before you'll be deciding that you probably want to do without a bunch of them as well. But it's part of Alpha software trying to make sure that we have every resource and every bit of knowledge possible at our fingertips. And you'll see a lot of that throughout the system. I'll try and show you some more of that later on. So here's the Web Projects control panel, and we'll just take a brief view of this here. We'll be working with many of the parts and pieces over this series here. You'll see that we have a toolbar at the top here, and we'll be using the new to do a lot of our new pieces, our components and our pages, but we'll get to that later on. You can add files to your project. Once you have different pieces in the project, they'll be listed in this large area here, and you can click on them and edit them or delete them. You can start new projects. You'll notice that the system has a default project for you, and you can actually start a new project, and it would start in a whole other folder underneath your database. I've seen a few people do that, but for the most part, I think that you'll find that just putting your entire project in the default folder will serve your purpose just fine. And there's not a whole lot of reason to create a new project or use another folder unless you know you have a good reason to do that. Later on, when we have some components and we have our project underway, we'll be publishing that project to our local host to see how things go on our local machine, so we can preview our project and work with it. And then later on, of course, to a remote server. We have quite an extensive and very well integrated web security framework we'll definitely explore. There are project properties here, and we'll be taking a look at that. I noted in the introduction here that Alpha software, Alpha 5 version 11 especially, is constantly growing, and one of the places where things are being added on a pretty regular basis is in the web project properties. So there's a real good chance that by the time you get this video, there will be some other things here, but we'll explore some of these later on. There is a working preview so that you can click on something to see that. You can open your project folder in Windows Explorer, and Alpha 5 version 11 has a really nice and very highly featured web style builder to help you make your site look real nice to go along with how well it works. Over here we have just a sorter, basically, that as we develop all the pieces that will be listed in here in our folder, this is just a sorter that filters things for us, and we'll definitely be making use of that when the time comes. So this is your Alpha 5 Web Projects control panel, and this will be the launching spot for a lot of what you do. Now, just a little tip here: if you're working with a web application, one of the things that you want is for this to load automatically when your database starts. So let's close this for a moment. And from the desktop control panel, we're going to pick File and Database Properties. And from the Database Properties dialog, we can choose to show the Web Projects control panel when the database is opened. I'll suggest you just leave the rest of these alone. They don't make a whole lot of difference. And then you can also note there's libraries and events, but the one thing that I'd like you to do is check this. And it's just one thing, but when you're doing the same thing really frequently all day long or for many hours, every little step makes a difference, and this is one of them. So we'll click OK here. And now we'll effectively close this database by closing the control panel. And now we'll pick File, and we'll just use our most recently used database to open this up again. And you'll see that the Web Projects control panel automatically loads now for us. The regular desktop control panel is down here. There's a tab at the bottom for it. But this little bit and lots of other little bits like this will just save you some steps, and you can focus on your project rather than all the mechanics of getting things done. And I'll note that there are lots of other places that you can manage Alpha 5 to become just exactly the tool that you want it to be. And we'll definitely point out a couple of those a little bit later on when they make more sense. So that gets you started with the Alpha 5 Web Projects control panel. And in our next recording here, we'll jump right into creating our first component in Alpha 5.